Okay, thank you everyone. Welcome back. So next session, session 4, will be moderated by Susan Palmer, religious extremism and anti-cultism. Over to you, Susan.
Thank you, everybody. And thank you to AROPL for having us scholars. It's a fantastic experience being here. I'm learning a lot. So I would like to introduce my two speakers. Alessandro Amicarelli is Italian and British. He's a British solicitor and an Italian lawyer, and he works in human rights, focusing on new religious movements with freedom of belief and other groups. So,
thank you, welcome.
APC leader.
Rosie.
And Rosita Šorytė is she's a former Lithuanian. Well, she is a Lithuanian, but she was a former Lithuanian diplomat, right? And now she is working with different human rights groups in Europe and focusing on new religions again, as I said. Thank you.
Thank you. This starts with who starts? Pick this test, yeah.
Okay, so Šorytė's paper is on anti-cultism. She has, what's it called? AROPL and the rise of New Age anti-cultism. New Age anti-cultism, what's that? You will see. Yeah.
So, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for those who are very patient and stay till the end. So, in July 2025, many members of the Ahmadi religion of peace and light became aware of an organized anti-cult movement when several British media outlets, starting with the Guardian, launched attack against them. The campaign employed the typical arguments used to criticize groups labeled as cults. We usually do cults like this. The origin of these attacks can be traced back to a slanderous article written by a certain B. Scofield on her blog, Guru Mag. Scholars of new religious movements have studied the anti-cult movement for decades. Researchers describe it as comprising two distinct subgroups. Massimo Introvigne referred to the first of these in a well-known 1993 article as the counter-cult movement, which is driven by religious groups that feel threatened by the competition posed by the new arrivals in the competitive religious market. These groups often label the new movements as illegitimate, heretical, or even demonic. In some countries, religious counter-cultists can mobilize the government against the groups they label as cults. In Iran, the anti-cult movement is intertwined with the theocratic government. Countries like Pakistan and Malaysia have official Islamic councils that identify which groups they consider heretical cults. And these designations often lead to governmental repression. In Israel, as documented by Willy Fautré, Jewish ultra-Orthodox anti-cultism can influence governments that rely on support from religious parties. Although Russia is theoretically a secular state, the Putin regime seeks the support of the Russian Orthodox Church, which plays a significant role in establishing a unified consensus. In return for this support, the regime takes action against groups like the Jehovah's Witnesses, which the Russian Orthodox Church condemns as sheep stealers and cults. In South Korea, the anti-cult movement is primarily organized by Protestant fundamentalists. Despite not representing the majority of the population, they can exert considerable influence over political parties, elections, and government actions by voting together as a bloc. The second subgroup of the anti-cult movement is secular. It emerged from left-wing activists and intellectuals concerned about the rise of conservative from parents of students who in the late 20th century decided to leave college and to become full-time missionaries, monks, or nuns for new religious movements. These parents, who were often non-religious, were less concerned about the theological orthodoxy of these new movements. Their primary concern was to get their children back, and they listened intently to psychologists who claimed that their children had been brainwashed. Some of the fathers of the anti-cult movements, particularly in secular France, admitted they were against all religions and used cults as a starting point for a broader anti-religious campaign. Roger Icor, the founder of the French anti-cult organization CCMM, stated, and I quote, there isn't been between a cult and a religion a difference of nature, or rather of principle. There is only a difference of degree and dimensions. If it were up to us, we would put an end to all this nonsense, that of cults, but also that of large religions, end of quote. He also referenced Muhammad, Christ, and Moses as predecessors of today's cult leaders. In a book published this year, one of the international anti-cult movement's leading ideologists, Canadian sociologist Stephen Kent, argues that together with cult leaders, figures such as the biblical prophet Ezekiel, Paul the apostle, and Muhammad were all either schizophrenic or epileptic. More broadly, Kent insists that, I quote, there is clinical reason to assume that people who believe that they are having extraterrestrial contact may be demonstrating a symptom of schizophrenia, end of quote. As for people, again, people who maintain that non-material spirit and forces do exist and offers prayers for divine intercession, the fact that they harbor magical beliefs indicate that they may suffer from mental disorders. A good number of religions, including the largest ones, were founded by mentally disordered minds, he concludes. China is home to the largest anti-cult organization in the world, the China Anti-Sejao Association, which is promoted and controlled by the Chinese Communist Party through the United Front. Most of its leaders are strong advocates of scientific atheism and Marxist dialectical materialism, and they maintain a hostile stance toward all religions. The sectarian counter-cult movement and the secular anti-cult movement are distinct but interconnected. Their ideologies differ, and there is always a risk that secular anti-cultists may target the religious organizations of counter-cultists. Nevertheless, operating under the principle that the enemy of my enemy is my friend, these groups have found ways to collaborate. In Japan and South Korea, we have witnessed a troubling alliance between fundamentalist and theoretically anti-communist Christian pastors who also act as deprogrammers, left-wing activists and lawyers, and even Chinese intelligence services as established by court rulings. Similarly, in Israel, ultra-Orthodox Jews readily cooperate with atheist anti-religious organizations to denounce cults and advocate for laws against them. FACRIS, the umbrella organization founded by French taxpayers that coordinates anti-cult movements across Europe and beyond, includes both deeply secular movements, such as the one founded by Icor, and until 2023, when it was forced to exclude it due to the Ukrainian war, the anti-cult agency of the Russian Orthodox Church, whose leaders are employed of the Moscow Patriarchate. Furthermore, books written by Western secular anti-cultists are translated into Farsi and used by Ayatollah regime in Iran against cults. The recent assault on the AROPL has uncovered the presence of a relatively new third player that warrants attention. I will refer to it as a New Age anti-cultism. This movement does not oppose so-called cults in the name of secular humanism or mainstream religion. Instead, it critiques cultic beliefs based on a confusing blend of astrology, energy theories, and popular esotericism. Although other instances exist, I will examine two examples pertinent to the AROPL. Additionally, I will explore whether New Age anti-cultism will be recognized as the legitimate component of the global anti-cult movement and whether it will benefit from the efforts of its coordinating agencies. So the first is B. Scofield, whose legal name, which is very interesting, whose legal name may still be Robert James Scofield. She or he is a 44 years old American transgender individual and a self-proclaimed cult hunter. In April of this year, she or he published the article that sparked the British campaign against the AROPL. Following her 2018 release of a comprehensive anti-cult expose targeting Dutch spiritual teacher Bentinho Massaro, Scofield's critics, including her victims and their supporters, have responded to the article by pointing out her disregard for facts and use of inaccurate quotes and references. While some have commented lightheartedly about her belief in astrology, an unusual trait for someone in the anti-cult movement, no one has taken the time to analyze her ideology and motivations. A significant reason for this oversight is the tendency to rely solely on online sources. Scofield, though, provides much more detailed information about herself in printed material that she does not share online. She reports that her journey as a cult hunter began in 2017 in Asheville, North Carolina. She was having lunch and felt overwhelmed by despair and suicidal thoughts. She was broke, traumatized by past experiences of abuse, and had experienced a soul death. Additionally, as a transgender person, she struggled with dysphoria and faced medical barriers that prevented her from continuing the estrogen therapy necessary to align her physical appearance with her perceived female identity. While she was seriously considering whether it was not better not to be here in this world anymore, a mysterious woman appeared who persuaded her not to leave before you've completed your soul's purpose. In retrospect, she realized the woman may have been an angel or a benevolent extraterrestrial. A journey begins where the same pattern recurs. First, Scofield receives unique information from five different sources. Astrology. An astrologer in particular advises her on the location she should visit every year on her birthday, where she awaits further revelations. Higher dimensional messages. She receives downloads from a higher dimension provided by both human psychics and angelic messengers who appear and disappear. Third, tarot cards. The tarot cards she uses for divination for additional insights. Fourth, Akashic records. She connects with psychic who can access the Akashic records, which are believed to be an archive of all past, present, and future events. And fifth, extraterrestrial contacts. Gradually, she becomes aware that extraterrestrials from a mothership also watch her and provide information. I do not consider supernatural experiences and revelations a subject of ridicule, although Scofield does when they occur in groups she disapproves of. Only information coming from these sources should be qualified for what it is. Scofield sometimes seems surprised that law enforcement does not accept her mystical experiences and evidence. I believe that individuals who experience psychotic episodes, whether due to gender dysphoria or other reasons, deserve help and compassion. However, it becomes problematic when they assert that their experiences uniquely qualify them to identify brainwashing of psychosis-inducing techniques within spiritual movements. Suffering from a heart condition does not make one of the cardiologists, you may say. Should they testify in court, the mental stability of these individuals could become an issue. However, this does not seem to concern the media that utilize them as cult experts. When her mystical sources guide her to a specific location, Scofield realizes it is the site of a spiritual community or a place where she can gain insights about the religious group. This revelation is not entirely surprising, given that thousands of such movements exist. Additionally, her astrology directs Scofield to well-known hubs of spiritual activity, including Sedona, Arizona, Hawaii, Orcas Island, etc. Then she arrives in a new location. Scofield receives messages about a cosmic battle between the light and darkness and realizes that a dark Luciferian cult is operating in the area. Her mission is to eliminate this cult. However, there is an additional issue that Scofield downloads from the spiritual realm. They consistently have a dark nature. Although she claims to be the level 2 certified Reiki masters, dark presence is manifest when she administers Reiki to others. And me, as a Reiki master, I can say, if in the healing process there is a dark energy, it's not Reiki. Because Reiki is a divine energy which never can be dark, and certainly it will not lead you or command you to seek out and destroy somebody. Scofield receives assistance from equally mysterious but non-mystical sources. After her first article against Bettino Massaro, quote, an email changed everything. Someone wrote saying they wanted to support me in reporting on cults. They offered to give me a fixed income of several $1,000s per month. End of quote. This situation lasted only a few months, but she later received similar assistance. The identities of these generous supporters were not specified, nor was it clear for what exactly they found it for. It is possible that this was related to the fact that at one point, Scofield felt compelled to criticize scholars of new religious movements. For instance, she labeled Eileen Barker as the mother of all cult apologists. She referred to Gordon Melton as a pioneering cult apology scholar. Described Susan Palmer as having a disturbing fascination with dangerous cults. And of course, there is Rebecca Moore is not here, and Catherine Betzinger is not here, but Massimo Trovini is here. This occurs years before any of these scholars had criticized her or were even aware of her existence. One notable example of Scofield's controversial actions is her 2019 attack against the Aravinda Himadra. The spiritual name of Yanis Briedis, a teacher and lecturer residing in Orcas Island, Washington. She accused him of being responsible for the murder of Carla Schaffer, a Baha'i woman and psychiatric patient whose body was found in a pond on Orcas Island in 2006. Carla has previously been hospitalized due to multiple knife injuries A police investigation determined that these injuries were self-inflicted. However, Carla maintained that a supernatural being had attacked her. Her death was ruled either an accident or possibly a suicide. A small group of citizens from Orcas Island, including Carla's ex-husband and former lover, attempted unsuccessfully to convince the authorities that foul play was involved in the woman's death. They speculated about the involvement of unspecified satanic cult and pointed to a group called the Children of Light, whose existence the police could not verify. This group was not the former name of Aravinda organization, as Scofield has claimed. By 2018, the case had nearly faded from memory until someone asked Scofield to travel to Orcas Island and reveal the truth about Aravinda. Scofield alleged that Carla had been a member of Aravinda's cult and was killed because she wanted to leave it. Followers of Aravinda hired a detective agency to investigate and compile a report on Orcas Island. They ascertained that Carla had attended parties and gatherings at Aravinda's house, but it was before any group was officially formed. Although she remained friendly with the spiritual master's followers, she was not interested in moving from her Baha'i faith to a different spiritual path. Following the publication of her article, the detectives revealed that Scofield had falsified statements from persons she intervened. One of those individuals, David Lutz, who had been a close associate of Aravinda, who was disturbed by her misinterpretation that he went to a police station to file an affidavit. In this affidavit, he stated that he had informed Scofield that Carla was not a member of any group led by Aravinda, and she had mental health issues. However, Scofield's article suggested the opposite. This is yet another example of Scofield's dishonest journalism. However, the detectives hired by Aravinda's friends overlooked, or at least downplayed, a crucial point. Scofield disregarded the opinions of law enforcement, the medical doctors in Bellingham who treated Carla, and even her relatives, including her brother and doctor himself. Instead, she relied on what she believed to be more trustworthy sources, such as feelings of demonic presences on Orcas Islands and possibly another angelic visitation. Two additional features characterize Scofield's activities as a New Age anti-cultist. First, she exhibits the same megalomaniac delusions that she attributes to cults. She consistently portrays the groups she critiques as large, powerful, and a threat to the entire planet. For instance, she labels AROPL as, I quote, the largest doomsday cult in the world, end of quote. Similarly, she describes Agama yoga, a small Thailand-based offshoot of the largest Romanian group, yoga group, Nista, that we have here, as nothing less than a central spiritual point of subjugation and domination of women on the planet. I reduce this to a pile of ashes. It was another victory for the light, end of quote. However, the first time I checked, Agama yoga was still active along with other movements she claims to have destroyed. Scofield asserts that her article played a significant role in driving the movement known as Love Has Won to near extinction. This group later gained media attention when the devotees were discovered keeping the mummified body of their deceased female co-leader at their headquarters. She suggests that her reporting inspired several successful TV shows about Love Has Won. However, she was neither quoted nor credited in any of them. Second, without contradicting the first comment, Scofield's article can be considered a form of hate speech that may incite violence. Thus, it is not inaccurate to say that they have consequences. She skillfully promotes her work on various, it's very surprising, on various websites and social media platforms under different pseudonyms, creating the illusion of a larger movement when in reality it is one woman operation. Scofield specifically targets the towns where spiritual communities thrive, generating a sense of fear among the residents. She takes pride in stating that her article forced Bettino Massaro to leave Sedona. This occurred due to the extensive promotion of her exposé, which resulted in death threats against Massaro and harassment of his followers. As she dryly reports, just 8 days after I published, one of the Massaro's followers committed suicide. She credits herself in her article on Love Has Won for what happened to members of the group in Kauai in Hawaii. And I quote, "The cult's brand new car and rental home windows were smashed. Video showed rocks being pelted at the residents. Large bonfires were used on the beach to try and smoke out the cult. Locals patrolled the area on horseback," end of quote. In the end, Love Has Won had to leave Hawaii. Whatever one may think of the movement, what Scofield was taking credit for amounted to physical violence against people who had not been convicted of any crimes. Scofield's success in generating violence against spiritual groups can be attributed, as she acknowledges, to her choice of targeting relatively small movements that had not been studied by scholars, at least before she turned her attention to AROPL. This lack of scholarly attention meant no alternative narratives were available to counter her claims. She admits that she was aware that attacking spiritual groups could provoke legal and public relations responses, but she hoped, but by avoiding reporting on Scientology, I could avoid it, end of quote. Scofield believes she is justified in her actions because she sees them as part of something much bigger. She argues that cults create dark portals through which demons invade our planet. Scofield feels it is her calling to close these portals. Healing an old conflict between two groups of extraterrestrials is essential for benefiting humanity. According to Scofield, she is uniquely capable of healing the ancient extraterrestrial rift because she has a direct line to the aliens. These highly advanced spiritual teachers and masters support her and the planet during this critical time in planetary evolution. They provide Scofield with otherwise inaccessible information and guide her in dismantling cults. Now we have another character. Scholars who published work about AROPL often receive emails from a man named Wahid Azal. Some recipients have reported these messages to the police due to their potential implications of violence. Azal is also known for his extensive writing criticizing AROPL, the Baha'is, and other groups he labeled as cults. There is some cause for concern. Azal once posted answering one of his critics, I quote, "I don't just live in a spider house. I am the spider itself that draws its prey into its web for the kill. Taking down people like you and your master is what I do for a living. Now I will also find out the names of your Baha'i contacts one by one and disclose this information directly to Iranian authorities. End of quote. Considering that members of the Baha'i faith are regularly tortured and sometimes killed in Iranian jails, the threat should be taken seriously. Born in Iran and now residing in Australia, he founded a new religious movement called the Order Sufi Fatimiyya. He claims this movement is part of Sufism. However, many Sufis would not recognize it as such. Australian scholar Milad Milani describes it as a form of New Age syncretic esotericism with unknown membership, initially founded in 2002 and established in 2005 in Australia. Azal's order signifies a profound transformation in Islamic esotericism. It utilizes a variation of the hallucinogenic tea called ayahuasca. Azal also contends that Fatima, the daughter of the Prophet Muhammad, is not just a respected historical figure, but a divine incarnation. Azal, like Scofield, gathers insights from mystical visions and revelations, often induced by hallucinogenic substances. Instead of using the Amazonian ayahuasca, he has opted for Syrian rue. This change was supposedly mandated during a visionary ayahuasca sessions with the mother, the spirit intelligence of ayahuasca, who appears to Azal as Simurgh, the mythical griffin from Persian mythology, and Fatima in a radiant form. He asserts that as a young man, he visited the Kaaba, where Fatima pierced his tongue with Zulfikar, the mythical sword of her husband Ali, an act symbolizing divine empowerment. Additionally, Azal claims to receive revelations from plants, some of which he believes are manifestation of archangels. Azal asserts that he is the global organizational umbrella leader for the original movement founded by Iranian prophet known as the Bab. He argues that this movement was corrupted and distorted when it evolved into the Baha'i faith, which he characterizes as the archetypical cult for his revelations have called him to combat. Azal claims a spiritual lineage to the 19th century Babi revolutionary and mystic poet Tahirih, identifying her as his direct ancestor and a manifestation of Fatima. Azal admires both occult master Aleister Crowley, whom he once called a supernatural genius and the greatest prophet of the age, and the right-wing esoteric author Julius Evola, from whom he derived that the notorious anti-Semitic hoax, the Protocols of Eldre of Zion. Even if materially forged, is reliable in its content and documented the occult war of Jewish against non-Jewish. Azal asserts that his mystical experiences have allowed him to move beyond the Marxist ideology he embraced in his youth. Yet he still considers some elements of it to be valid. His political views are somewhat muddled, but he offers an esoteric interpretation of recent history, highlighting the significance of the Jewish messianic movements led in the 17th and 18th centuries by Sabbatai Zevi and Jacob Frank. Both figures claim to be awaited Messiah, with Frank presenting himself as Zevi's reincarnation. Ultimately, their movements collapsed. Zevi's devotees dispersed after he converted to Islam, while Frank and his followers were baptized en masse as Catholics. However, Azal believes that what he refers as the Sabbatian Frankist cult did not vanish, but was instead secretly integrated into Catholic Church as a covert Jewish elite army tasked with special operations against the enemies of the Vatican. During the Cold War and beyond, he claims that the Vatican shared knowledge of these hidden cultists with the American CIA. And as the Sabbatian Frankist Jewish Catholic agents were engaged into covert operations against Marxism and Islam. In recent years, the Catholic Church and CA, he says, have established what is referred to as Sabbatian Frankist Global Outreach Front through the efforts of three sinister individuals. Now listen carefully. Massimo Introvigne, Jean-François Mayer, whom Azal describes as controversial Swiss Catholic and historian, although he is a member of the branch of Russian Orthodox Church, and Gordon Melton, a Methodist minister whose connections to the Vatican and CIA are suggested but not elaborated upon. The organization they created, Chesnur, is seen as the modern incarnation of the Sabbatian Frankist agency controlled by Vatican. Worse, he describes it as the actual face of evil itself. Some anti-cult activists have accused Chesnur of receiving funds from various cults. In contrast, Azal argues that it is Chesnur that, on behalf of the Vatican, has created and funded cults, including AROPL. If you didn't know, now you know. Which he claims was invented to create discord within the Shia community. According to Azal, they fund the cults. He elaborates extensively on how AROPL promotes discord and introduces unorthodox ideas within Muslim communities. One example is the concept of reincarnation, which Azal describes as, I'm quoting, an incoherent metaphysical fantasy, and thus a complete fallacy, end of quote. The debates surrounding reincarnation are as ancient as religion itself. What is new is Azal's conspirationist claim that, I quote, reincarnation upholds extremely negative political and social implications, and as such, as a belief, it would implicitly cultivate authoritarian and abusive cult frameworks and paradigms, end of quote. Azal has even published a fatwa against AROPL. He had issued fatwas against various groups, although this is not common in the Babism tradition. The anti-AROPL fatwa uses the writings of the Bab to contend the interpretations of Shia sources made by Abdullah Hashem, the founder of AROPL, labeling this as spurious. Azal also emphasizes the Sabbatian Frankist nature of the AROPL, providing evidence by showing that the name Abu al-Kazib, Hashem, numerically parallels of Sabbatai Zevi. To achieve this result, Azal adds the numerical values of Mahdi and Dajjal, the Antichrist, to Hashem's name, then subtracts 1. Furthermore, the black hats and clothing worn by Hashem and other AROPL members are interpreted as proof that they are son of darkness. It's good that you're learning. I'm very glad. Having concluded, because you see, without some people, you would not know who you are, like Chesnur, you see, it's like, you know, they're also learning. Having concluded that Hashem is the devil incarnate, and the Antichrist, the son of perdition in person, Azal, now is serious, Azal issues stress to academics studying the AROPL. And now I'm quoting, have some shame, some foresight, and simply don't. Shun this organization and its leader like it is the Black Plague itself, or without a doubt and to a moral certainty, you will be sorry, end of quote. According to Azal, as it now does for AROPL, Chesnur allegedly acted as an umbrella patron for the terrorist new religious movement Aum Shinrikyo, working to destabilize Japanese government and society on behalf of the Vatican and the CIA. Additionally, Chesnur was purportedly involved with an unnamed Czech cult association with pedophile, child, and sex abuse, which seems to refer to the past of Yara, aiming to apply similar pressure on the authorities in that country. Chesnur is claimed to ensure, it's a quote, Chesnur is claimed to ensure that such cults as a pressure tactic execute their destabilization activities in those countries as proxies, end of quote. It would be a mistake to conclude that Chesnur's aim and those of the cults it creates and finances, including the AROPL, are merely geopolitical. Azal explains that, I'm quoting, given the kind of depraved sexual, physical, and emotional and violent abuses that such cult process of Chesnur regularly perpetrate, crimes which AROPL itself is accused of, this in itself can be framed in occultic, ritualistic terms as a sort of postmodern Sabbatian Frankist mass ritual in desecrating the sacred, end of quote. Azal writes that the Vatican and the United States annihilate their enemies through such esoteric rituals. He is also an occasional poet, and he nicely summarizes all of this in a poem. The Catholic Church and Chesnur play the long deceit and crush their foes through front lines at their feet. Abu Kazib is but their puppet face, a ploy to shatter Shia's sacred grace. Voila. Some may argue that Aum Shinrikyo was founded in 1987, before even Chesnur was established. The Chesnur has only been involved with the AROPL since 2023, and that Azal misinterpreted AROPL theology. However, these objections overlook a crucial point. Like Scofield's theories, Azal's ideas are not grounded in facts. Instead, they mainly stem from mystical revelations, experiences induced by hallucinogenic substances, and communications received from plants and their archangel spirits. I would pay archangel spirits. Countering Azal's claim that factual evidence is akin to critiquing a fantasy novel about the dragons and elves by objecting that such creatures lack simply documentary support. The New Age approach to anti-cultism represented by Scofield and Azal seeks to be recognized as a legitimate part of the global anti-cult movement. Both authors know that their unconventional ideas might easily be labeled as cultic deviances, to borrow a term, dérive sectaire, that aligns with the designation of the French anti-cult governmental agency, Miviludes. Despite this, they argue that they have valuable contributions to make to the broader anti-cult community. They attempt to ingratiate themselves with the movement by quoting established anti-cult figures and the programmers such as Rick Ross or Stephen Hassan. Azal has even published an article expressing his excitement upon discovering a piece against Chesnur written by Luigi Caravaglia, a board member of FECRIST. Azal should find it remarkable that Caravaglia arrived at the similar conclusions all by himself without relying on mystical insights, revelations from divine figures, or hallucinogenic substances, at least as far as we know. The story concludes with Azal admitting that he, I quote, owes an immense debt of gratitude to journalist B. Scofield for introducing him to Caravaglia. Rather than being offended by being quoted by Azal, Carvalho asked a certain Cosimo Barone to write for his website an article. Hailing the war of two very different characters, Azal and Carvalho himself, against the common enemy presented by Chestnut. The article published by the FECRIS board member with pleasure suggests that Azal's vertical, Gnostic, metaphysical attack on Chestnut is a welcome and somewhat needed complement to the horizontal one by Carvalho. It appears that mainstream anti-cult advocates are beginning to welcome their New Age counterparts, although this collaboration is still in its early stages. More importantly, in the case of AROPL, Scofield's statements have sparked a series of articles in the British media. Azal's arguments and information have likely been utilized by media connected to the Iranian government to justify the regime's repression of the AROPL. This concern is greater than whatever Scofield or Azal may have written. In 1964, American historian Richard Hofstadter published a notable article titled The Paranoid Style in American Politics, which he later expanded into a book. He observed that bizarre conspiracy theories, often stemming from religious mystical visions and revelations, and frequently targeting unpopular minorities, have always been part of American political history. However, these theories become particularly alarming and can lead to violence when even media outlets and politicians, typically considered respectable, begin to take them seriously. And you saw the Swedish case. New anti-age anti-cultism is not entirely surprising. It is part of a phenomenon known to scholars as conspirituality, where conspiracy theories intersect with spirituality. However, it is concerning that mainstream media sometimes takes seriously the claims about groups labeled as cult that are produced by fringe authors who may have psychiatric issues or are based on revelations from angels or extraterrestrials. At this point, it is too early to determine whether New Age anti-cultism will be accepted as the third branch of the global anti-cult movement, alongside its religious and secularist counterparts. Yet, it is worth considering whether the mysterious benefactors who emerged to support French characters like Scofield are part of a larger trend in which unstable authors and questionable mythics are used as weapons to undermine cults. Real paranoids have real handlers. Thank you very much.
Thank you.